engage in some wonderful conversation with a feature we call NunSense.
There's common sense, and that's a good thing, but nothing beats nonsense. So it is time for NunSense and a visit with Sister Rejane. Sister, it's good to be with you again.
Yeah, happy feast day of St. Simon and Jude.
Yes. Hi. Good to be with you both, too. I thought, we've got All Saints coming up, so why don't we focus on the saints of the day?
Yeah, let me start this with a question, and maybe you're going to cover this in your conversation anyway. Why are they always together?
Because they got martyred together.
Oh, there you go.
In Persia. I mean, according, of course, we don't have the records of that, but that's in the Catholic Roman Church. That's what we say, that story holds. Yes, that's why they get celebrated today.
Well, and that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It totally does. And I mean, they're two of the original 12 apostles, but we don't know a ton about them, right? Because, well, other than they have the same name as somebody else in that list of 12, they get confused.
Right.
But in today's gospel of Luke, we've got Jesus going up to pray on the mountain before making his decision to call his 12 apostles, and that's unique in itself because Jesus called the apostles himself, and in his time, if you were a rabbi or a teacher, usually your disciples, they sought you out. And so that was usually the reverse, that the disciples usually approached the rabbi and said, hey, can I be your student? So Jesus did things a little different than what was expected in his day. And then he drew not the educated necessarily. He drew different professions like fisherman, tax collector, carpenter, and then a zealot, which was Simon the Zealot. And I think the fact that he chose apostles across the spectrum said he was inclusive and didn't really have a favorite type of person. And that's kind of revealed in these different backgrounds and experiences that his apostles had. And I think the reason he kind of picked Simon is the zealot. He wanted to reach out to those who were maybe firmly committed to their Jewish heritage and traditions and beliefs, and Simon could reach those people. Now, of course, he's not to be confused with Simon Peter. And they definitely say it in the Gospels that it says Simon the Zealot or Simon the I can't pronounce the word, but it's like Canaan, which I guess means zealous. Yeah, and that, what does that mean? It was a Jewish sect that represented like Jewish nationalism, right? They really believed the messianic promise from the Old Testament. That meant the Jews were to be a free and independent nation, so that God alone was their king, and that any payment of taxes from the Romans was not a good thing. It was blasphemy against God. So Simon the Zealot was one end of the spectrum, and what's so interesting is, Jesus called Matthew a tax collector who was collaborating with the Romans by collecting the taxes for them. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear what Simon the Zealot and Matthew's conversation was like. There had to be a lot of tension there. It'd be like, today when we try to have political conversations, right? It's the same. But that's Jesus for you. He didn't shy away from the conflict. Okay, so now let's turn over to Jude. Jude was also called Thaddeus, and he's not to be confused with Judas the Iscariot, the traitor. And, he's honored, St. Jude's honored as the patron of impossible or hopeless causes. And because of that, he's often invoked in hospitals among those facing like life-threatening illnesses. Now, like Simon, he's mentioned in the Gospels usually as only a name, except in the Gospel of John. At the Last Supper, Simon gets a speaking role. He says, "Lord, how is it that you will reveal yourself to us and not to the world?" Meaning being the Christ. And then once in the Acts of the Apostles, once the event of Pentecost happens, we don't hear any longer about Simon or Jude. So, supposedly Simon went to Egypt and Jude went to Mesopotamia, and then the two met up and went to Persia where they were martyred. so I thought I'd close today with a prayer to St. Jude. I found it from the St. Jude the Apostle Catholic Church in Westlake Village in California, and it was a beautiful little prayer here. It says, St. Jude, may your path of hope be mine in the days ahead. I promise in faith to share your hope with others and to forgive as I am forgiven by my Father in heaven, and to show caring and kindness at every opportunity. Guide me, St. Jude, so that I begin each new day with gratitude, truth, and hope in my heart, and challenge me, St. Jude, to end each day reflecting on my actions and motivations so that I grow in faith, love, and hope. Amen.
That is a beautiful prayer.
Amen. Love that, and love St. Jude. Always reaching out to him, not only for impossible causes, though, right? I mean, such a servant of God.
Right.
But I grew up in a parish, St. Simon and Jude, so their naming day today. So